You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me, as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how are you, buddy?
Doing pretty well. This is the second recording of the day with you, so I get to spend a few hours with one of my favorite people in Carl Dumler. Not to get all sappy on you, but we're coming up on another year, and I'm really excited to spend it with you.
I know, man. I know. How many years is this for us now?
I believe we started in January or December of 2017. It was the draft leading up to the selection of Garrett Bowles.
Okay.
So we started off with the draft podcast specifically. And I think Chad was doing Locked On Broncos then. So he had the Huddle Up domain that he was not using. And, things changed. So we got to eventually start the Building the Broncos. He came back to the Huddle Up domain. And now we're a daily podcast, which is luckily for us, it's twice a week. I know that I love doing this with you, but 6 times a week seems like it would probably be a little bit much just with our other schedules. This isn't our full-time gig, but 2 times a week we get a 1 time a week, but 2 times a week we get to come to the listeners and get a share our nerdiness and our Midwestern stuck in the Midwest, longing for Colorado Denver Bronco thoughts.
It's true. Very, very jealous of all you Colorado people. Maybe someday, but not right now. But yeah, no, it's always fun to get talk with you some football, man, and always love our podcast. It's been quite the adventure for both of us to be where we are here today and get to do what we love.
Yeah, and thanks to the listeners who put up with us. Some people think I can be a little bit negative sometimes. I'd like to say I'm a realist, but I'll try to do that. I know the last episode we recorded one right before this where I listed some of those concerns. I think I'll turn it around next week and I'll do some of the reasons to be optimistic for the upcoming season on the offense and the defense, because there are reasons.
Excited for that. Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there are reasons, but I feel like I'm immersed in Broncos country, so I am surrounded by the way too orange and blue glasses takes and try to pull back some realism. But that said, there are reasons to be positive, and biggest positive for me is all you listeners joining us every week. Really appreciate you guys, and we wouldn't be here like we say in the intro, we wouldn't be here without you. So just wanted to give a shout out to all you guys, and really looking forward to the season with you. If you have any questions, comments, get to us on Twitter, on YouTube. I really have been trying to get onto YouTube and talk with you guys as well. So just really, really blessed to be at the situation we are, where people take time out of their days to bring us into their homes, their cars, their work, and hear us talk football. So it's really a awe-inspiring thing.
And I just wanted to say that I'll be at Broncos camp Monday and Tuesday. So if any of our listeners are planning on being at camp Monday and Tuesday, I would love to meet up with you guys, get a chance to sit and watch practice and talk football. I would love that. So again, hit me up on Twitter or hit up Nick, whoever you want to hit up, or the BTB football pod. I'll just give those here right to you. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and you can find Nick at Nick Kendell MHH, and of course our podcast Twitter account at BTB football pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating, as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles and all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. And if you enjoy our show, make sure you head on over and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, where Building the Broncos along with Huddle Up are found under the Huddle Up podcast. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the season is back, and we are bringing back our regular season show of the Scouts Eye Preview. Of course, Chad and Zach will be bringing you the kind of the review of the game and everything that happens on there. But we always love to get to the nitty-gritty of what we're looking for in the game, give you some things to be watching for. But this is going to be our first one. I'm so excited. I couldn't hardly sleep last night just thinking that we are actually in game week. It's awesome. I love it. Thursday can't come here fast enough. My wife's like, what are you doing Thursday night? You going to spend time with your family? I'm like, watching football. I might spend time with you.
My Bronco family.
Right. Yeah. She's like, oh yeah, football's back. I couldn't tell if she was doing the sarcastic or happy. I'm not sure. Is your fiance excited about football being back?
I mean, she really does like football. That said, this is getting to be the time of year where half of my conversations somehow are directed back to football, and she's not really so much a fan of that. Especially with the wedding coming up. It's like, oh yeah, we got all these things we got to do. Oh, this is kind of like the Broncos. They have all these things they have to do to prepare for the season. She's like, wow, I'm going to kill you. She's excited for football, and she's been immersed in it. She's grown up a Hawkeye and going to games and stuff, and a student for God, who knows how many years now with undergrad and getting her PhD at Iowa. So football season's got a special place in her heart too, but she's not a psychopath like you and I talking about football, writing about football, and, the listeners listening to a football podcast as well. So that's okay. She puts up with it, and that's about as much as I could ever ask for. And she genuinely cheers for the Broncos and the Hawkeyes. So really no complaints.
There you go. Yeah. I always have to temper myself when I'm writing a sermon because I want to tie everything back to football. It's because we do that so often of tie everything to football.
Did you ever watch South Park?
A little bit.
Like one of the first seasons, they were like they were Catholic. It was a Catholic priest, and they were talking, Jesus and the Holy Trinity, and God bless John Elway. Amen. And amen, everybody. So anyway, continue. I just made me think of it. And John Elway.
I have to temper myself and say, okay, like one football analogy a month, just to make sure that they're not going, oh my gosh, shut up about football. But
especially in Kansas, that's
right. Well, yeah, and at least half my congregation is Chiefs fans.
Yeah.
So I definitely have to temper some of that. But no, I mean, I'm excited for football, man. I'm excited that we get to talk about it, get to talk about something that's actually going to be happening on the field. This is it's just awesome. And it's a team that, like, the last couple of years, I think we've both kind of been like, oh man, this team, it's just not anything that got us all that excited, other than maybe like thinking, well, Paxton maybe finally gets everything to click. But beyond that, it was just kind of hard to get too excited, and it felt like wasting kind of, especially Von Miller's prime years on a lot of things. But this is a team that I'm actually a little bit excited about. I'm not expecting Super Bowl by any means, but I do expect a better team than what we've seen. And so one thing that we kind of want to talk about, because it is preseason. So with the Scouts Eye preview, it's not really much of us looking at the opposing team and saying, okay, this is what they're going to do. This is what the Broncos should do, because no team really game plans for this. A lot of times, I mean, even Vic Fangio talked about it, that there are going to be times where they put players in a not so good matchup where maybe zone coverage would be the better coverage, but they're going to put them in man just to see if they can handle it. So again, trying to figure that out of what the Broncos should be doing in the game, where that's not really the point of preseason. We thought we'd spend today just talking a little bit of what we want to see in the game. What should we actually be looking for? And it's more geared towards the Broncos. What are they doing players-wise, matchup-wise? I mean, not matchup-wise, but I mean just looking at the backups, especially for this one, and some guys that are really fighting for roster spots.
Yeah.
And it's nice this year where there is a lot of competition.
Yeah, and I do want to note before we go farther that these preseason episodes, specifically this game, I guess it'll be 2 in week 4, will be somewhat different than the episodes we have during the regular season, because typically we kind of want to really highlight the opposing team's strengths and weaknesses, tendencies, roster, etc. However, going against these really vanilla play callings, against second, third, and fourth string guys, where a lot of these players are going to be working at a bank or an enterprise in a few months, maybe a few years, we're not going to spend time talking about the Falcons' third string center. I don't want to talk about it. You guys don't want to listen to about it. So we're going to instead preseason focus more onto the camp battles, what we're looking for on the field from a Broncos perspective. But when the regular season comes around, obviously if they're playing the Falcons, we'd be talking about Julio Jones, the rookies on the right side of the Falcons offensive line. So just a little bit of a disclaimer and a caveat that I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, definitely. And so I thought today we'd maybe pick a couple things or a couple battles that are going to be going on within the Broncos and position battles that both of us really want to see. And I guess I'll start out with my first one here. And I mean, we could talk about the quarterbacks, and I mean, that's always going to be a topic, especially when you got a young quarterback like Locke. But right now, I'm not too worried about that as much as some of these other positions where it's really not set as much. And so my first one is safety. And I look at this safety group, and it is one of those that I think could be one of the best safety groups in the NFL, at least top to bottom, when you're looking at like 1 through 4 or 1 through 5 of how the Broncos, depending on how many they decide to keep. But you got Kareem Jackson and Justice Simmons. Probably neither of them are going to play. Will Parks is probably not going to play a whole lot just because those are your top 3. They're known. Everybody knows those 3 guys are going to be making the roster. But after that, it really does get kind of exciting just to see how this is going to play out. You got Sua Cravens, the guy who has all the potential in the world, but has really struggled to show it on the field, has really struggled to stay on the field because of health issues, but also there's been concerns of how much he loves football. It really sounds like this year he is very committed to football. He's lost weight. He really heard Vic Fangio when he said he's got to make it as a safety. And now he's really putting it out there that I'm a safety. And he's been making plays. He's been, from what I understand, doing very well in the film room, those kind of things. But he's got a lot of competition. You look at Trey Marshall, a guy that could be a very, very dynamic special teams guy, loves to go out there and hit, has some versatility. DeMonte Thomas, another guy that he's been forcing turnovers in practice, got some play last year, and has some size to him. Is he 6'2"?
I believe so, yeah. Something
like that. So he's got some height that can really match up with some of those bigger tight ends. And, then you got a couple other guys. I'm not going to talk about them a whole lot, but it's still – Jamal Carter's another one, and Shamarko Thomas are the other 2. They got to do something special, I think, to be able to make the roster. But I guess my question is, one, how many safeties do you think they're going to keep?
I think that they'll probably end up keeping, probably 5. I think that 5 seems a good. It's either 4 or 5. I can't imagine more than 6. We need to see these guys play in camp. DeMonte Thomas, Sua Cravens, Trey Marshall. I think those are the 3 that are in crux. The top 3, like you said, they're in Kareem Jackson, Parks, and Justin Simmons. But after that, all 3 of those guys that I listed have a chance. I don't think, from what we're hearing, that like Jamal Carter has a chance, but DeMonte Thomas, he's definitely one. And maybe they could end up trading one of these guys to a team. Hey, maybe the Falcons see somebody they like. They lost J.J. Wilcox this season already. They could maybe trade for somebody especially after seeing them against the Broncos. But right now, 4 or 5. I need to see them before I really hammer it down. I'll go with 5. I think that when you have Kareem Jackson who can play cornerback as well, I think having an extra safety is beneficial.
Well, they're usually pretty big players on special teams.
Yep, exactly.
Safeties and linebackers always seem to really make the special teams plays. So,
and wide receivers and tight ends. Those are the biggies.
Right. And so, yeah, I could see him definitely keeping 5. I'm with you. And so it'll be interesting just to see how these guys sort themselves out with Cravens, Marshall, Thomas, 3 of them fighting for 2 spots is the way that I would see that playing out. And I guess right now, I guess I would say Sua Cravens is ahead of the other 2 from what I'm hearing.
Well, based on the depth chart, that'd be a safe assumption. Yeah. But also Fangio said that everybody besides the starters, it's a mishmash behind it. So he's trending in the right way, which is pretty much all you can ask for. Very talented guy, always kind of been a tweener. Is he a linebacker, is he safety, but trending the right way. And if he can, he's definitely no guarantee, but if he can come on this team, good attitude and whatnot, giving that depth back there, that's huge. You never know when you need to call upon that guy. And it's an old cliche, but football team's only as good as the worst guy on its roster. So if he can bring the floor up, that's huge.
Now, have you heard anything about Trey Marshall and DeMonte Thomas?
I've heard both DeMonte Thomas and Trey Marshall have been looking pretty good as well. Obviously it probably will come down to the exact type of fit that the Broncos want, where Thomas is much more of the classic deep end free safety who can come down and play some slot if they want to, and Marshall is much more of the coming downhill, filling in big hitter. So really it depends on, right now I'd say Thomas, has probably the guy I would lean towards, because even though Parks is listed as a free safety, we know he's more of a dime backer, free safety, nickel type, or a strong safety. He's more of the physical type of guy. And then obviously you got Sua Cravens, who is more of a prototype strong safety in that regard. So having Thomas, who I think could probably play better in the more of the two deep safety kind of coverage shells that Fangio and DENvsATL like to use. I think he's probably a better fit in that regard if it's coming down to the defensive side. However, if it does come down to more of the special team side, probably Thomas. So Marshall. So it'll be really interesting. I mean, I'm glad you picked this. It is one of the more interesting battles, and whether it be a play on the ball or a good tackle or a mistake, that could make or break things even this early. So we'll see. It's definitely interesting to see the momentum of these guys heading in and knowing that this is probably the Broncos' deepest position on the roster, top to bottom, and they might end up having to move on from a guy who's going to be snatched up by another team right away just because the quality and the quantity at safety.
Right. I do think if there is a position that could actually have a guy cut and make another 53-man roster, it is this position. So I'm like I said, I'm very excited to watch them, see what they can do on the field. And I guess this is my other question, just because we're doing a Scout's Eye preview here. How much should fans really read into what happens in a preseason game? So, like, we're hearing things of training camp and what's all going on, who's being successful, who's not, all those kind of things. Well, how much do you weigh preseason compared to, like, training camp reports and things like that?
I mean, it's definitely a part of it. I put more stock into it than the training camp practices. And then, obviously, the actual games are above that. But you have to also know that the competition they're going against, you have Kyle Sloter going up and putting up big numbers against third and fourth stringers. That doesn't mean very much compared to a guy doing stuff against second team or a guy doing stuff against the first team. So context is really key. And in that as well, it's the type of play calling that's going on. It's very, for the most part, very generic play calling. You're not going to see really expansive route trees or a lot of trickeration from offenses, and you're not going to see as much blitz packages, disguise coverage. These guys are going out there. It's more about kind of running some reps, getting that chemistry, rather than trying to go out there and actually win that game. Obviously, you still want to win the game, but there's other things at focus here. You're not going all out to win that game like you would in a regular season game. So context is king. It does matter, but it's definitely not the end-all, be-all. It's just a part of the puzzle and one that we, the fans, are most privy to. But training camp, as well as what they're doing in the film room, the meeting room, the weight room, all goes into it.
Okay.
What would you say?
I'm with you. I agree that, one, we don't get to see a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I mean, the coaches get to see, are these guys engaged in all the meetings and things like that. That'll play into some of their decisions. And training camp, I always find it interesting. Like, I've gone before. One, there's so much going on, it's hard to keep track of everything. So you're always missing something. Two, because we don't know the play calls and what's all going on, we don't always know who made the mistake or who did something right. And so, like a couple years ago, when it was a battle between Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian, and Paxton Lynch was turning the ball over like crazy. And so a lot of people were kind of giving things to Trevor Siemian, but it wasn't that Trevor Siemian was really beating him out, because Trevor Siemian was making mistakes in the fact that the coaches said, we want you to challenge things down the field. This is the time to go make those mistakes. And he kept taking all the checkdowns. So both guys were actually failing, but I guess Siemian was still completing passes, just not doing what the coaches asked him to do. And so, again, it's context is king. We don't always know what's always going on. But for actual games on the field, the win or lose, it does matter a little bit, I guess I would say. And just I think they said something about, like, the last 10 Super Bowl champs have had a winning record, or at least a 500 record in preseason.
But you can't, personally, I can't not think about all those Colts teams with Peyton Manning that went like 0-4 at the same time.
Right. And I get that. So, I'm not saying that it's the end-all, be-all. But there is something to say about, if your second and third string guys can go out there and win, at least it shows some kind of depth. At least you have better depth than the teams you were playing, is one way to put it. But again, it's still – I look at more individual battles. That's why I love to go back and watch the All-22. where you can really see, okay, this guy lined up against this guy. So this corner, he had man coverage. Did he absolutely win or did he absolutely lose? You can tell that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that's what we'll be looking for when the games are finally played and we get a chance to review them and watch them, 2-3 times, checking out those individual battles. Because I think that is really much more indicative than the total piece, like what the entire offense or defense is doing. It's more about those individual battles and if those guys are lining up and winning their reps against their counterpart. So I do agree with you there, and I think that's a big one. Do you think that there is a chance for a guy like, Jamal Carter and who's the other safety? His name
Shamarko Thomas?
Yeah, Shamarko Thomas making the team?
They'd have to go out there and just absolutely show something that they haven't shown in training camp.
Yeah.
I mean, that does happen every once in a while where a player just gets into a game and there's a switch that gets flipped.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very rare that you see that where they don't at least show something in training camp too. Now, Jamal Carter, I do think he is a great example of a guy that he's much more set for a game than he is for training camp because his greatest skill is his ability just to go just lay somebody out.
Yeah.
Well, in training camp, they're pretty much telling the guys, please don't do that. We just can't have you can't have your guys going out there and getting hurt in training camp. You can't have friendly fire kind of thing. And so in a game where he can the coaches say, do what you do. And we saw, was it 2 training camps or 2 preseasons ago where he just was lighting it up. I think he led the
playing like
tackles.
linebacker.
Well, yeah, it was just, he was having a good preseason.
Then he got hurt last year.
Right. And so I do think he is one of those guys that could really show something. I'm not sure Shamarko Thomas can show anything. I mean, he's been in the league for how many years now, and teams have just kind of given up on him.
He's just a special teams player.
Right.
That's what he is.
Right. And so of those two, I could see Jamal Carter rising up.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that. I mean, it kind of shows how finicky these undrafted rookie guys kind of are, but he was trending the right way. He might have been a guy who could have made some noise last year, gets injured, and totally throws off his career trajectory. So you never know. Nothing is guaranteed, and a lot of times those guys who are drafted, they get much more of the benefit of the doubt than the undrafted guys. So, we'll see, but I am not holding my breath. I think that the guys that we highlighted there and Marshall and Thomas and Cravens, much more likely to make the team, but you never know. This is the next hurdle here in the preseason. It's a totally different beast than training camp and scrimmages and practices. So things can change. But for me here, the biggest, we have a bunch of different kind of things we can talk about here as far as the battles in training camp, or not training camp, in the preseason game we are interested in. And for me, I got to say, I'll keep it on the defense, but it's got to be linebacker, right? Vic Fangio is one of the most renowned linebacker coaches in football. From the 49ers to the Bears to seasons before that, he's coached a number of all-pro talents, some guys on their way to the Hall of Fame, undoubtedly. And he's done great with them. A lot of people really respect his eye, not only for scheming defenses, but developing linebackers. So what the Broncos do at linebacker is going to be really interesting, and to see how these guys play is going to be very interesting. Obviously, you have the Broncos. A lot of fans were clamoring for the team to make some moves at the position in the offseason, whether it be free agency and C.J. Mosley and Quan Alexander, who got just incredible deals, or 2 top 10 picks in Devin White and Devin Bush. Instead, the Broncos bring in some undrafted free agents, Joel Deneen, Josh Watson, and they have some other guys there, but they, for the most part, sticking with Todd Davis and Josie Jewell. However, Todd Davis goes down, I think, training camp day 1. Was it day 1 that he went down? Day 2?
I think it was day 1.
Might have been day 1, yeah. And he should be back for the Raiders game, fingers crossed, because he is the Broncos' best linebacker, in my opinion, at least what we've seen so far. But now it's wide open. Josie Jewell, he kind of had an up and down season last year. Really was not put in a good situation for his skill set, though. So maybe in a more zone-heavy, heady type of defense that's going to ask more mentally, he could do better, more zone coverage, more matchup zone, where they play zone coverage and they kind of switch to a man when a guy gets in their zone. And then, more flowing to the line of scrimmage. So Josie Jewell, year 2, that's a really interesting one, but how these guys fill in for the likes of Todd Davis, I'm very interested to see I don't think we'll see Josie Jewell in the Falcons game, but guys like Alexander Johnson, who a lot of people are speaking pretty highly of. He's kind of more of a throwback linebacker, but in a 3-4, if you can have a big guy who can just wreck offensive linemen and be a big physical presence in the box, especially when you don't have a true nose tackle type when Shelby Harris is going to be up there, I think Alexander Johnson is a really interesting one. Really highly thought of player from Tennessee before the sexual assault charge that was dropped. No charges brought upon him. So that's I don't know. Obviously, I don't have the case in hand. I wasn't a part of the case, so I don't know the specifics there. But it's been dropped. He's starting his football career, and some people are pretty high on him. Josh Watson, undrafted free agent from Colorado State, has been getting reps and has looked okay. I'm not expecting, a great player there, but he's definitely one that got to watch for because he has been getting first-team reps with the likes of Todd Davis out. And then the other side, the other linebacker position, Joseph Jones, probably the Broncos, not probably, I would say the Broncos' most athletic off-ball linebacker. Can he be solid against the run? The Falcons are going to be a team, more of a zone team since the Kyle Shanahan when he was there. So that athleticism is going to show its head, especially against those zone stretches. If he can be good against the run, that's huge. And then Keyshawn Bierria, a lot of people sleeping on him, 6th-round pick from not this past draft, but the draft before, and was okay last year, more special teams. But right now he's listed 3rd team. He's got a chance to make some plays and really step up there. So curious there. And then finally, the other linebacker who I'm listed as an edge, but might be playing off ball. They've been playing him there in the sub packages, and Justin Hollins. So I'm really curious to see where he makes a play. And I wouldn't be surprised if he starts off the game and gets a lot of snaps, but he starts off as an edge rusher when the defense first goes out there because they're not going to play Von Miller or Bradley Chubb. And then when the game progresses, you see him switch to the off-ball position. So just to get the reps there and kind of see how he looks. So I think he's actually probably the one I'm most intrigued by because, what is he, 6'5", 250, which is a really, that's a edge rusher position, but he's not the bendiest guy, but he still has great athletic traits. So, really curious to see what he can do at off-ball position. But, even if Todd Davis was not injured, we'd still see these backups. But because Todd Davis is injured, it's going to take him a little bit of time. And even if he's going to be ready week 1, he's a pro's pro. He'll be mentally ready for the game. Physically, chemistry-wise with the other guys might take a little bit of time. That's something that we'll have to talk about in our Scouts Eye preview for the week 1 match with the Raiders. But see how these other guys can step up and fill in and potentially push both Jewell and Davis is probably the thing I'm most interested in on the defensive side of the ball in a game like this one where the starters are not going to be playing. Do I really care so much about the 6th and 7th cornerback on the roster? The answer is yes, I still care, but not as much as the linebackers. So I think that is the area of the defense that I am most interested in, and along with the safeties, just because I think the safeties are of higher quality, so they're more interesting to watch.
A guy that makes me think of Justin Hollins playing that off-ball linebacker. And I know this name's going to be probably a little cringeworthy just because he wasn't always the smartest guy on the field, but Jamie Collins. Because he was 6'3", 250.
Yeah.
And he played that off-ball linebacker kind of role for them, for the Patriots, before he got traded to the Browns. And isn't he back with the Patriots now?
I think he is for a veteran minimum because he was so bad with the Browns.
Right. And so, it's probably not giving people a lot of hope for Justin Hollins playing that off-ball linebacker, but his problem is more the mental side of it.
Yes.
Athletically speaking, he could do a lot of good things on the field.
Oh, freak. One of the freakiest linebackers coming out of the draft in the last decade. But it takes more than athleticism at the linebacker position. It's magic when you have both.
Right.
But it takes more than athleticism, as we've seen.
Right.
So any of those guys are you really excited to see on the defensive side?
Yeah. Joe Jones is really the guy for me just because, like you said, athletically speaking, the guy is probably the most athletic linebacker that we have. And so just seeing what he can do, I've heard he's done really well in coverage. If he could actually be that 3rd down linebacker for us, man, that really just allows our pass rush to do a lot more things. When teams can't just sit there and say, oh, we're just going to hit the dump off over the middle and pick up those first downs. Or because, last year, do you remember that Raiders game where they completed 20 straight passes?
That was week 2, right?
I think so.
Everything was within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage.
Right.
But they were doing it over and over again.
Right. And yes, the Broncos won that game, but really the defense was just not set up well. They just didn't have the players to match up. And so if they could have an athletic linebacker or just a linebacker that can cover, I guess that's more the way I should say it. Because like I said in our last podcast, and I'm working on an article right now just on this idea of Fangio's defense doesn't absolutely need athletic linebackers to make it work. Now it helps. Anytime a guy's athletic and can play football, that's a huge bonus for a team. But again, if they can just find one guy that can do something in coverage, it really changes the outlook of what this defense can be against a lot of teams.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you completely. I will say that I do agree with you that Joe Jones is the one that's probably the most applicable of these guys. You know, more of the weak inside linebacker, the coverage speed guy. But just for the sake of the guy transitioning and the fact that he's an athletic upside rookie, and I mean, again, changing positions from edge to off-ball linebacker, I am really intrigued by Justin Hollins. And I think it's going to be a mess at some points early on, but I'm just looking for those flashes, things that I can hang on and give me hope. You know, that's all I'm asking for in a preseason game. Just give me a little bit of hope. So speaking of hope, we hope you guys enjoy and stick around because we're going to take a break and we will be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All righty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast, doing this season's first Scout's Eye preview for the Broncos' first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game against the Atlanta Falcons. And Carl, you have listed first here, but since I'm already talking, I'm just going to cut you off here because I'm a jerk like that. I think the thing that's probably the most interesting of the entire preseason game here for the Denver Broncos has got to be number 3, Drew Lock. He's not going to start the game because of Kevin Hogan. You know, they're going to make Drew Lock earn it, whether that's the old school for the sake of being old school. You know, I guess we'll find out pretty quickly with how Kevin Hogan plays and Drew Lock plays, but he's going to get a decent amount of snaps, hopefully 4 series. That's what I'm hoping for. And we're going to get a glimpse of what the Drew Lock experience is going to be like when Bulls are flying. Like I said in the last podcast, I think this one will go up first. So tune in tomorrow so we can talk about that a little bit more. But I am a little bit concerned with the backup or third string offensive line that Drew Lock is going to be playing behind. That said, Fangio did say that Bowles and Reisner and McGovern are going to take snaps in this game. Those guys need it, those 3. So that is interesting. I think that is actually pretty interesting considering they have 5 preseason games that those starters are going to be playing. But Drew Lock probably not going to be behind a very solid offensive line. The Falcons, they've done a pretty good job building a solid defense. They've had injuries and whatnot, but even like the depth, they fly around. They're one of the fastest, most exciting defenses, and including the depth. So I think Lock's going to be under some decent amount of pressure. And the back 7, they got some athletes back there as well that can move around. So Kevin Hogan, I'm going to watch it, but the sooner that experience is over, the better. I mean, we all know what Kevin Hogan is. I think at best, he's a team's third string quarterback that's going to be bouncing around. But preferably you're only carrying 2 quarterbacks, Joe Flacco and Drew Lock. Unless, Ripien kills it, that we'll see about that. But ideally you're only carrying 2 to have another spot open. And hopefully Drew Lock kills it. I will switch it off to you, though. What are the things in this game particularly that you're looking for from Drew Lock?
Well, I mean, poise under pressure.
That's huge.
Because he's going to be under pressure. There's no if or anything like that. He's going to be under pressure.
Can you expand upon that? What is poise? What is this poise you're looking for? Because that can mean a multitude of things.
There's a few things. One thing you always saw with Paxton Lynch, when pressure came, his eyes went down. And the ball came down. I mean, he just wanted to bolt. So can Drew Lock be willing to stand in the pocket, to try to step out of pressure and keep his eyes down the field? That's one thing. 2, just not panic the second pressure gets there and just throw it, where he's not even looking where he's throwing. He's not reading the defense, that he's just letting the ball fly and just trust his arm. So can he wait that extra half second when he needs to, or can he know when to throw it away? That's one thing I've been hearing a lot of at practice is he's been the smartest quarterback when it comes to knowing, hey, this play is done. Just get rid of the football. Don't turn it over. there's been a few plays for There's been a few plays for Hogan that's been an issue for him. Pressure comes up the middle. He just throws it as quick as he can, led to a few picks, more than a few picks. And so for me, it's just seeing how he handles that kind of pressure. Does he know when to throw it away when he needs to? Because a lot of rookie quarterbacks struggle with that. But also just to know when to take a couple chances as well, and just when to look for his check down, but not look too often where, hey, my first receiver's covered. Oh, take the check down. So there's a lot of things that play into that I'm looking for in him. And then I am looking for him to show a little bit of touch. We already know he can throw the 100-mile-per-hour fastball. That's never been his issue. Can he be a guy that when it asks for touch, when the guy is 10 yards away running the slant pattern and you don't have to rocket it in, can you add just that touch to make things a little easier for your receiver? That's something that has to stick out where, like I said, we know what he can do. We need to see that growth of what he couldn't do before, at least, or that he didn't show as often on tape. Is there anything else you're looking for?
For me, I am looking for that if he does go out there and make a mistake, and this is something that he's been complimented with throughout his career, almost too nonchalant with it sometimes. But if he goes out there and makes a mistake, don't beat yourself up. You know, you're a gunslinger. You're a quarterback. You're the Q, as Drew Lock would say. Go back out there and make that throw again. You know, learn from it, but don't be intimidated. And I don't think this stage, it's not really an NFL stadium. It's not going to be that huge audience bearing down on him on the road. But go out there, have fun, let it fly. Don't think too much. Just be natural. That being said, I am curious to see if he can play within the structure of the offense. We know that he has that ability to go do things, the extraordinary things. Things break down, use his legs, make a play on the run, throw it sidearm. That's there, which is awesome. That's awesome that he has that. That's something that Flacco might not have. It's that X factor from that quarterback position that we're seeing more and more be valued. But the thing that moves the ball consistently that the offense is going to be predicated on is timing and playing within the structure of the offense. And that's something that the reports are he's been getting better at it, but it's something that's going to take time for him. It's something that he didn't do consistently enough at Missouri. So if he can do that, the footwork, the arm release, just playing in rhythm, in the timing of the offense, even just spurts of it. It doesn't have to be perfect, obviously, but just spurts of it, showing that he's doing more of that than he was in college. I'm going to be very excited, right? Because that's what it comes down to. He's got to figure out how to be that cog in the offense, be the guy who can play that point guard, and then make that play when he needs to. You can't be the superhero running around all the time. He's not Vic and Madden. He needs to be the consistent guy in the pocket, run the offense, and then when it's called upon to make that play, you can do it. You can pull out that card. But if you're pulling out that card every time, you're going to run an inefficient offense, and it's not going to work. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Just in control, running the offense, using those mechanics, not being flustered, making the play that's needed, that's in front of him there. And then when the time comes, going out there and delivering the big one, the what's the word I'm looking for? The death strike, so to speak, that pulls the heartstring out there. He's not going to get a full game, might only get one quarter, but that's really what I'm looking forward to. And I won't lie, I'm excited to see the arm talent and the big throws. I'm hoping for at least one big throw because, man, after going from Case Keenum and Trevor Siemian and Mark Sanchez and the quarterback who's ducking it and running it on 7-7s and Paxton Lynch, seeing a quarterback then go out there and make a wow throw is going to get me hyped.
Right. And I heard somebody describe it the other day when they were talking about Carson Wentz. And they're talking about how many injuries he's had and things like that. And somebody brought up that he needs to stop trying to be Michael Jordan and make all the big plays and sometimes just be Magic Johnson. And what they mean by that is just take what's there. You don't have to be the star at all times. You can make others be the star. Distribute, get the ball to your playmakers, let them go actually make plays for you. You don't have to. I've heard that one of the issues that he's had a little bit in training camp is he's trying to show that he can make the tight window throws too often, where there's other guys that are more open that would be an easier throw, an easier option, but he wants to show that he can make those tough throws. And I appreciate that, but at the same time, that's not what you need to do in games. There's just times, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, those guys always knew who was going to be open. and that's who they got the ball to. Let the playmaker go make your play. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to be the guy that makes every single play for your team. So, yeah, I'm excited to watch him. I think I honestly expect him to do pretty well. I do think he does really well in gaming situations where just because he has athleticism, he's going to be able to do some things. Because he can do those crazy arm angles, he's going to make some plays that are going to have fans talking about, and the radio's buzzing, we're going to be buzzing, all those kind of things. Like I said, that playing within the scale of the play, can he show some of that stuff? But, I mean, I look at like when the Broncos had their practice at the stadium. That was probably the practice that had the most pressure when you got 21,000 fans watching you. And who was the best quarterback of the day? Drew Lock. So, again, I expect that he's going to be able to go out there, and that's going to be an exciting time for him. I think there's others that will wilt where he's one of those guys that just shows up in those moments. So, I don't know. I'm excited to watch that, but I'm hoping to see after the game that they sit there and say, okay, yep, it's time to get this guy a lot more snaps.
Yep, and I'm not cheering against Kevin Hogan because otherwise I'll get an angry email from one of the 12 Kevin Hogan stands. But the sooner we can move on from that in the direction that is towards Drew Lock in the future, probably the better for everyone.
And did you hear his interview today?
Kevin Hogan or Drew Lock?
Kevin Hogan.
Not. Okay, no, I haven't.
Okay, so essentially, I mean, I will applaud his ability to handle. I mean, he had a lot of tough questions of, hey, you got Joe Flacco in front of you, you got a young quarterback behind you. I mean, you're kind of in a terrible situation. He said, well, I understand it's not the most ideal situation. And then he said something that really stuck out to me of, hey, I'd love to be a Bronco this year, but if I'm also looking at being able to perform towards other teams too. Like, he understands it's not just about him trying to make this Broncos roster, but him in these preseason games, he's trying to show other teams that maybe he's worth at least a roster spot if he can't make it here in Denver. So I thought that was a very good understanding of his situation.
I mean, he's not stupid. He's a Stanford grad. So
all true.
Not to totally throw him under the bus. But I'll kick it off back to you. You have another position here that you're really interested in with this first game.
Well, I mean, of course, I'm going to talk wide receiver.
Yeah.
I almost left this one for you, but I'm like, why would I leave him wide receiver? That's my position.
It's becoming my brand for the upcoming draft. But that's just because I will pound it into everyone's head until it exists. But continue.
Right. But no, I mean, I'm very interested in this position for lots of reasons. One, I can't wait to see Juwan Winfrey. I mean, we've been hearing for a couple weeks now that this guy is going out there looking like the best receiver on the team until Sanders now has gotten back. But making plays left and right, I'm just excited to see him actually do that on the field. I mean, he's Kevin Hogan's best friend right now. And I just, like I said, getting him on the field is going to be very, very exciting. But then, of course, you got the guys that are fighting for that top or for that sixth spot. Fred Brown, Nick Williams, Kelvin McKnight, Trinity Benson, and Brendan Langley. This is probably that one position where you have the most guys fighting for one spot. And these preseason games, every mistake is going to be compounded. Every big play is going to be expounded. And so just for these guys, how do they handle such a very pressure-filled moment for them? Can they perform? Can they do something that just makes the coaches have to take notice? Or are they going to be the guys that drop the passes like we've been hearing a lot of during training camp? I just, like I said, this is probably some of the most competition for one spot on the entire team.
Yeah, especially what do you think? Safety, maybe. I would have said wide receiver before, but now that we talked about that safety spot.
Well, I mean, I guess it's, for me, at the safety position, you have three guys fighting for two spots. Where this one you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys fighting for one spot. So I think that's just a little bit of difference where there's a little bit more pressure because, I mean, you really have to stand out so much more than the guys around you.
Yeah.
You can't just beat out one or two. You got to beat out 5 other guys to make this team.
Yeah. And it feels like pretty much right now I'd say that 5 of the guys are probably for sure making it. So it could be a possibility that these guys are fighting for a spot that's not going to exist, right? Like there's a possibility they only carry 5 wide receivers.
There is. I mean, if one of the running backs really rises up and shows that he's the special teams guy, then you could have one of the running backs instead of one of these guys make the team.
Yeah.
And so all this fighting could be for naught or otherwise, other than making practice squad or making another roster. But I don't know. I mean, I just feel like right now there's a very good chance one of these guys is going to make it.
Yeah, I agree. And I got to ask you, which of these guys are you looking for specifically in this game, and what specifically are you looking for from them? Specifically McKnight, Brown, and let me see, Langley is another one, and one of them, Trinity Benson.
Yep. So the 2 names that stick out to me that I've been hearing pretty good reviews about, Trinity Benson, Kelvin McKnight. Both of them have special teams ability. Both have done pretty well as receiving options. Both have had different days. McKnight's had a lot more run, I think, with the ones than Benson at times. But Benson, just again, I've watched some of his college tape, and he's so much bigger than you think. I think he's like 6'1", which for a speedster is actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And he's got long arms. And I think he's one of those guys that actually could be a decent receiving option, but also give you plenty in special teams. And so I'm looking for him. What if he can make a name for himself? Kelvin McKnight, again, just another kind of speedster guy that adds at least a little bit of dynamic. I mean, we talked about it in another episode of just how much the offense is missing a dynamic playmaker. Well, if one of these guys can at least give you that 2 or 3 plays on offense a game where you stick him on the field and teams have to go, oh, man, okay, this guy's got speed. We got to watch out for him. At least makes teams have to plan for it a little bit.
Yeah, I can't disagree. And speaking about some of the speed, do you know what Trinity Benson ran? Would you say it was?
I don't know what he ran.
Okay, he ran like a 4 or 5. So the one that really shocks me that was, I don't want to say disappointing. I'll say disappointing. That just kind of let me down. Kelvin McKnight ran a 4.62.
Oh.
For being a small guy, that's not too good. Which, I mean, big reason probably he didn't get drafted, looking back. But that's man, I will say when that came across that number, I was like, oh, yikes. You know, but I'm in a need for speed right now. So, all right, well, need for speed. We need to get a move on here to try to close out this episode. So we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. The Scout's Eye preview, first one of the year, talking about the Falcons, and I figured we'd have just kind of a quicker closeout section here, but some of my favorite quotes so far from Fangio, DENvsATL, Scangarello about this preseason game, since we're not breaking down the Falcons as much as we were, but some of my favorite quotes here, one of the big ones, I think, from Vic Fangio on play calling. I'll just read that here. The main thing that we want to accomplish, the question is on play calling philosophy in the preseason games. The main thing that we want to accomplish is get the individual and the team ready for the regular season. One of our biggest jobs is to make sure we pick the right 53 guys. We want to see guys go out and play. There will be times where coaches, we may ask a good feel for what, whereas coaches, we may have a good feel for what the other team is going to run, but we're going to call something that's hard for us just to see if our guys can handle it. You know, a hard assignment, not a hard mentality. But can guys cover receivers? Can guys rush the passers? Can we stop the run? So it's an evaluation tool mainly. You know, like anything, once you start playing, that competitiveness gets in you and you want to win the game. But really it's about the evaluation and getting the team ready for the regular season. That's job number 1. So again, talking about taking the preseason with a grain of salt, they're going to put these guys in situations to make them, the Broncos themselves, you know, they're going to try to work the offense and get some of these concepts down, but they're trying to evaluate these guys. So they're going to put them in situations, whether it be Justin Hollins lined up in man against a tight end, or seeing Royce Freeman or one of these wide receivers, you know, running a tough route in a tough assignment. You know, can you pull off that double move? Can you guard that pass rusher on the edge by yourself? So they're going to put these guys in situations where they're going to see if they can sink or swim. And when the regular season comes, you're going to see more adjustments, more game planning for opposing teams. They're going to help guys out. You know, they're not going to leave a tackle against Khalil Mack one-on-one. That's just not going to happen. But in the preseason, it's going to be a little different.
Did you notice in his quote there that he didn't mention one offensive assignment?
Yeah, he did. I mean, I noticed that. Yeah.
Okay.
He's still giving an example.
He's still got defense on the mind,
which I don't hate.
Right. I don't either. I always love like when they were asking him about the struggles of the offense, and he's like, "Why can't it just be that the defense is doing good?" And he wants his defense to get the credit they deserve. I love that about him. He's fighting for his guys. But no, I mean that's a great quote, and it's just a showing once again of just the vast understanding of everything that you're trying to do, of everything that preseason is supposed to be about. That this isn't about just going out and winning games. It's not just about, we're trying to get through this injury-free. That this is really something that is important and something that we can learn for our team to get the true right 53 guys. And I love, he just doesn't sugarcoat anything. He doesn't try to play to the media all that much. He just says, okay, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing this. And at the end of it, you're going, man, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I feel like that's been a commonality for this entire preseason process so far. And, you know, it definitely is partially the honeymoon phase, right? for the coach and the media. But it does seem like he is just, you know, he's got it together. He says the right thing, and everything he says, it's like, oh, yep, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, I'm about that. I get it. And anything that I've questioned, I've turned around and agreed with after hearing him talk. So that is a fantastic thing that I am excited about. And man, I know he doesn't want us to use that word culture, but it does feel like he is establishing a culture, and this team is heading down the right path. It might not happen year one, but they're heading down the right path. So that's got me excited. And another quote here from Fangio said we're going to have Garrett, Dalton, and Connor play a few plays on Thursday, so that's interesting. Also, as we said in multiple episodes so far, that Fangio says the current depth chart doesn't really matter. Honestly, if he could not give out a depth chart, he would, I think, but they have to due to NFL rules. So everything else is a free-for-all besides who we know who's been working with the one. So while Fred Brown is listed as on the third team, McKnight and Benson have gotten more first-team reps. So that's important to note, as well as Alexander Johnson being listed above Josh Watson. Seems like Josh Watson has gotten more first-team reps. So definitely put that in your back pocket. And then finally a quote from Scangarello that I think is important. He said, he was asked about the bad snaps and if he's in danger. Scangarello said that Connor McGovern is playing at a very high level. It's just one of those things where we have to work through the process of it. You can't take anything for granted in the league, and it's just a little thing, but it can turn into a big thing, and we've still got a lot of time. So Scangarello saying don't panic, guys. However, I feel like he is Kevin Bacon in Animal House right now, because snapping is such a fundamental thing that, I mean, we saw it in Super Bowl 48. Sorry to cause some PTSD there. That a snap can really change things quickly, and a bad snap can cause the outcome of a game to differ greatly. I mean, you're already down behind the sticks after a bad snap, so it's a little thing right now, but it could turn into a big thing. So I'm a little bit worried about that.
I mean, it's when I've heard that there's only been one practice that had a clean practice without a bad snap. Yeah, that's definitely something to be worried about. So I like McGovern. You and I have talked about it, that we thought maybe center was his better position, but snaps right. You got to be able to snap the ball to play center. And so far right now, I'd say that's something definitely to keep an eye on. And it's why I'm excited that they're giving him as many opportunities in an actual game and to go show that he can do this. I mean, it's just to help him too. And to have Garrett, Dalton, Connor, I mean, all these guys, they need some snaps. They need to show, like with Garrett. I've heard he's doing much better this year. He's taking to coaching. His steps look a lot better. But what happens when he gets into a real game situation? Does he go back to what he used to do, or is he going to really show that coaching has shown improvement? Dalton, as a rookie, obviously, it just needs to get out there and hit some people in live action games. Connor with the snaps. So all those guys playing make a ton of sense for this Thursday. Yeah,
I don't disagree with you at all. And something I do want to bring up here, we have a question from Jedi Joshua. He said that he asked us, hearing a lot of good things about DeMarcus Walker. You guys think he sticks? Also, gun to your head answer, who's your guys' pick for the 6th wide receiver slot and the first backup for inside linebacker? So I'll kick that off to you, Carl. The DeMarcus Walker. Actually, I'll read a quote first. We had a quote from Ed Donatel today on DeMarcus Walker. He said, "Everybody just says his play has spiked. From what I can tell you, it's the kind of play we need. He can be a contributor. He's hitting his blocks is the first thing. He's playing good run defense, and he's showing some improvement in the pass rush. So that's good, and I'm still wait and see with Walker, but if he can even be a quality backup pass rusher, interior defensive lineman, that's good. It's not exactly what you want out of your 51st overall pick in the draft, second round pick. You don't want a rotational defensive lineman, but that's better than a guy who's cutting out of the league already, or a guy who's cutting, sounds like he might be out of the league, like Paxton Lynch or Monte Ball, or a lot of other second round and third round, to be honest. Day 2 misses for the Broncos. So, you know what? Let's see it from DeMarcus Walker. New scheme, maybe he screw into it. He still has the same defensive line coach, so I don't know how much the coaching change as far as development matters, but maybe something's clicked with him mentally, better scheme for him. So we'll see there. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it does help. One, they view him as a true interior defensive lineman, where the last coaching staff tried the whole, well, maybe we can try him at outside linebacker because we have some injuries there, or we can move him. I mean, he was never built to be that tweener, kind of go between the two. Either, to me, I thought when he came to the league, you needed to put some weight on him and try him at that 3-tech, 5-tech defensive line and try to see if you can develop him there, especially as a pass rusher. And so this coaching staff actually seems like they pretty much told him, hey, you're going to be a defensive lineman. You're going to have your hand in the dirt. Don't worry, you're not going to be asked to bend around the edge, things like that. And so it sounds like he's put on some weight, some good weight. That there's a big difference between those two. And is making plays. I mean, he's beating some first-team offensive linemen, and I've seen many people talk about that he looks like a different player. And, yes, we got to see it in the games that it actually shows up when it needs to show up, but I'm not going to count the guy out. I mean, I know we talked about him being as a fringe roster guy that we didn't think was going to make the roster before training camp started, but this is part of the evaluation that things happen and minds get changed. Guys all of a sudden have things click, and I hope that's the case with him because, I mean, that just helps the Broncos all the more to have another pass rush option on the inside.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. And I guess the next one, 6 wide receiver slot. Right now, I would guess Trinity Benson, but Fred Brown, Brendan Langley, and Kelvin McKnight, we'll see. It's really hard to say until we see the games. And first backup for inside linebacker. My understanding is that there isn't a first backup to inside linebacker. It's dependent on which linebacker is out. So each inside linebacker spot has its own backup. So Josie Jewell's backup is Joseph Jones, and the backup for Todd Davis is listed as Alexander Johnson, but snap-wise, it would appear it's Josh Watson. So we'll see. We'll see there. What do you think? You agree, or you have a different 6th receiver?
No, I have Trinity Benson. I did just look up. He ran a 4.44 40.
Oh, hey, I'll take it.
So that was at his pro day, and he had a vertical jump of 40.5 inches. So, I mean, athletically speaking, that's pretty impressive. I mean, if you're comparing to other players this past year, that 40-inch vertical, that would be 7th among all wide receivers. So I'm not saying that all of a sudden he's going to turn into this all-star player, but when you're talking about special teams ability, check. Got some receiving ability, check. Adds a little bit of athleticism when you're talking wide receiver and being able to spread out the field, check. He meets all those criteria. Now he just has to go show it on the field.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you. All right, well, any closing thoughts before we close this on up and get on out of here?
Thursday can't come fast enough. That's my final thought. All
right, well, we're pretty much exactly at an hour again. Chad, we're sorry. I know you want us to get us between 35 to 45 minutes, but damn it, there's so much football to talk about. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find more content covering the Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it. And next time we talk to you, a Broncos game will have been played. We'll see you guys soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.